My dear, wrote E. E. Cummings, unbeing dead isn't being alive. Just because you inhale, exhale, consume nutrients and vitamins doesn't mean that you're alive. Weeks back for a table topic, I was asked about my childhood to dredge up a fond old memory for us all to share. Those present may recall it bombing. The problem I tried to explain was that as I see it, my autobiography doesn't actually extend back that far. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters guests, imagine solar wind and heat and pressure swirling mercilessly, battering dead rock that joins to form the molten infant, Earth. Eons of cooling and building, punctuated by violent stellar blows, are required before we can talk of a living, breathing planet. Just so, childhood is Genesis, a geological beginning, the ground for us, living, breathing us, to build ourselves. And just as in astrophysics, big things in life, ourselves for instance, don't come about easily. Without the cosmic violence of character formation, we don't ever grow or learn. We remain inert, unchallenged, and small. This for me is the truest sense of the word childhood. Granted, certain fundamental parts of who we are do come from those days. For example, I've always been a nerd. But it isn't until something colossal hits, a fight, a divorce, losing a loved one, and I pray nothing worse, that each of us begin to achieve ourselves, to build our lives, who we are, and most important, who we become. On that day, each of us graduates from childhood and becomes, however gradually or imperceptibly, the young man or woman it is my pleasure to stand before today. In my few years of life, I've learned, I've grown, and I don't ever mean to stop. And that's what I'm here to impart. Take charge of your lives, of who you become, but don't ever stop yourselves from becoming something else. Don't ever stop yourselves from becoming something new, something different. As Nietzsche said, a snake that cannot cast its skin has to die. I cast the skin of childhood October 2003. Without going into too much detail, a give or take 12-month period starting then paired twin demons of a severe awkward phase with bullying. I withdrew from sports, from my few friends. Speaking for me became almost physically painful. And under the surface of loneliness and shame stewed anger and hatred. Despising who I was, I crafted other identities. Among strangers, I was rarely Kevin Butts. I was more often Andrew Boyd or Jonathan McKay, cool names. Among friends, I was still Kevin Butts. I had little choice, right? But I was a Kevin Butts, born not in Concord, New Hampshire, but inexplicably England. A Kevin Butts who suddenly had now always had a twin sister that absolutely no one had met. I began stealing from the bullies. Lalik's journal, Patrick's glasses, Andy Maslin's TI-83. He very nearly caught me. And I won't mention what I thought of doing. When that long social winter finally passed, my knees shook, eyes throbbed in the sun. I had to learn or relearn everything. You bet I stumbled and still do. Moments like this are the true starts of our lives. Getting back on our feet after the storm has passed and forging out on the path of who we will become. And thankfully for me, my path has been anything but straight. If it were otherwise, I'm not sure I would have really learned anything. So where did I go? From compulsive liar and petty thief, what did I become? I became many things. Adopted many personae, swinging at times like a pendulum from extreme to extreme. It wasn't until much later that I realized that these me's, as superficially opposed as they seemed, were in reality one. That no matter the crowd I followed or the views I subscribed to, I was the same weak, immature, scared individual. When in 2004 I came back into the world, ready and eager to become something, the cool kids, my little brother among them incidentally, were into skating. I became a skater. I bought Tony Hawk's Underground, brand clothes from PacSun. I burned my brother's punk CDs. A few brazen stupidities and one orthopedic surgery later, however, I decided this wasn't for me. Fitting in with this crowd wasn't worth it. It wasn't all a loss, though. Thanks to a lucky entry in the Tony Hawk soundtrack, I discovered Metallica, the dazzling gateway into the brutal, sweet world of thrash metal. I thrived off of thrash, even if secretly I found the headbanging annoying and painful. Thrash metal branched to heavy metal, to nu metal, to German Tanzmetal. I eventually forced my head into the poisoned waters of death metal, endless jams of violent noise and depravity. But, of course, I, consummate metalhead, enjoyed it, right? Parallel to this track ran another. Influenced by a history textbook and a half-baked political consciousness, I became radically liberal. Listening to System of a Down, for example, made me despise the United States government and for a while the entire nation of Turkey. As you can see, I was incredibly impressionable to the extent that a conversation on politics one day with my father, a highly intelligent, if at times opinionated man, flipped me conservative. Armed now with hard facts rather than soft feelings, I took myself as far right as it gets. Less a conservative than a neo-fascist and a bully. I said, supported, and believed hateful, violent things I'm still trying to atone for. I knew the whole time what I was becoming. With each my forced personae, the metalhead and what O'Reilly calls the traditionalist, I forced myself to block out the problems, the contradictions, to anti-rationalize. But pressure built. I know many great people in other countries. Some of my friends are immigrants. Many people who hold opinions different from mine are otherwise really very cool people. Do we have to be enemies? Metal's good, metal's great, but too much gives me a headache. Can't I listen to something else? I eventually reached a few conclusions. 1, living with hate is a choice, and it's exhausting. 2, blindly living to someone else's dictates is insulting to human intelligence and dignity. In this case, Einstein would say, we were given a big brain by mistake, since for us, a spinal cord would suffice. I realized that this was all I'd ever known, all that I'd ever lived. The skater, metalhead, radical, conservative, there was no difference. These were labels. These were someone else's values, someone else's lives, and not mine. Don't become something. Become yourselves. My story does not end there. I continue to change, to modify who I am, what I believe. A new Kevin Butts wakes up, honestly, every morning. I'll never stop. Never stop moving, never cease to move until I'm dead, and even then, who really knows? This is what life truly is. We're not truly alive unless we're building ourselves, allowing ourselves to change and improve and grow. E.E. Cummings wrote, "Unbeing dead isn't being alive. Walking off the paved path to discover our own in the jungle, that's being alive." I'm Toastmaster.